notes out from last class, the ones where my board wasn't working. So Carlos, pull that out from when my board wasn't working. And let's make sure we got all these frequencies down, and I'm teaching you the next one. So what are all these ones in here in the center of my table? What are they called? Joint. Remember, so joint frequencies are your center. They make up your data. What are the outsides called? Marginal. So your total or outside is your marginal. What about when I'm dividing, the one we went over yesterday or last class, the one where I'm dividing joint divided by the marginal? What was that called? Conditional. So make sure you have this all down now that my board's decided to work. Joint divided by marginal, that's conditional. So like given or out of, that's what you just took a quiz on. Conditional. Cool. The last one we're going to go over is called relative frequency. So you can write it right below. I gave you guys room. So now we're going to do relative frequency. And so what relative frequency is, it's a decimal, or it could be turned to a percent. It's a decimal from 0 to 1. Relative to the total. So what relative frequency is, all you're doing is dividing each number divided by the total. So like if I were to redo that table, all the things in there would be decimals. So relative is your 0. It's a 0 to 1 decimal. It's relative to your total. I just remember relative related to my total. Just kind of write that down, and we'll go through what that is in a second. So right below it, what I want you to do is I want you to draw that same table that's above it. So I think there's like 3 right here. Yeah, you're going to actually draw the table. So like this. There should be 6 right here. And so we're just copying the table. So it said red, pink, doesn't need to be beautiful. Red, pink, blue, green. Total. Girls, boys, total. So it doesn't need to be beautiful. This is going to be your relative frequency one. So all you're doing is you're just dividing each number by the total. So like, for example, I'm going up here, and I'm just taking each of these numbers and dividing them by 32. That's what your relative frequency is. So like 2 divided by 32, what's 2 divided by 32? What do you end up getting when you put that in your calculator? 2 divided by 32, because this was 2, so I'm just dividing it by the total. What do you do when you put that? What do you get when you put that in your calculator? Anything? Oh. 2 divided by 32. Don't change it to a percent though. 0.0625. So we'll just put 0.06. We're just writing it as a decimal. That's what relative frequency is. We're just dividing each of those numbers by the total. God bless you. So this one was 4 up there. So we're just dividing each of them by 32. What's 4 divided by 32? 125 will round to 0.13. That's all you're doing. So relative frequency is just finding each number divided by the total. So like this one ended up being 6. What's 6 divided by 32? You should end up getting
21.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? 6 plus 13 equals 19. Does that make sense? So you all get what you do here. So we're dividing each one by the total. That's all we do. So go to the worksheet for today. We're going to start with seeing how much you remember that. So it says 8.5 relative frequency. It looks like this. And so all you're doing, here's the table that they give you. Now that the table's made, it makes it a little easier. So relative frequency is displayed in decimals. And it's always based on the total. So all you should be doing right now is I'm taking each of these numbers and what am I dividing it by? What's my total amount? 80, right? So you're taking each of these numbers and dividing it by your total amount by 80. So go ahead, try to do that. It's the same table underneath, so you don't need to draw it. And I want you to write each of them as decimals. So we're not going to grab the new paper. Does anybody need this paper? Cool. So you're taking, does anyone else need this paper? So you're taking each of those, you're doing it on your own. I'm going to just cold call. You're just taking each of these, like 8, and dividing it by the total, putting the decimal. That's it. You don't need to write that out if you don't want, but I'm just showing you what I was doing. That's what relative frequency is. It's relative to the total. So you're just dividing each one by 80, just to give you your decimal. Do you need the new? Did you grab the new? Yep, that one. Does anyone else need the new one? Yours. So you're literally take each number, divide it by 80, write that decimal down. That's all you're doing. You're just taking each of these numbers, dividing it by 80. Right. So since that's 8 right here, 8 nails like soccer, I'm just dividing it by the total. And whatever the decimal is, just leave it like that. Do you understand what we're doing? So start putting it into your calculator. You don't need to put the fraction if you don't want to. I'm just showing you what I'm doing for each one. So really simple. You're writing the fraction. So you're putting it in your calculator. Don't turn it to a percent, just leave it as like, so do this, then just leave it as decimal. Yeah, just leave it as a decimal. Don't turn it to a percent, just keep it as a decimal. And then you just do the yeah, it is 10%, but you can just you can just keep it as a decimal. It is 10%, but just keep it as 0.10. So make sure you're doing each one of them. All right, I'll give you another minute, then I'm just gonna have you guys, I'm gonna cold call and you guys can just do what the answers are. Keep them as a decimal again, where the probability is usually decimal, unless it's saying what is the percent, which it might, then you can turn it into percent. Remember that arrow button above the equals or above enter gives it to you as a decimal. Here's doing that for each one. No, just keep it like that. Who knows that part, yeah. If it's not too long, that's my. I'll give you another 30 seconds. Yep, you divide each one by 80. That because it will be 80, but this one will be 80 divided by 80, which is 1. Okay, let's see how we did. Victor, what did you get for this one? Keep it as a decimal though. Yeah, but you could just keep it as a decimal, 0.175. Kamari, what did you get for this one? Or you can just write it to 0.275. Steven, what did you get for this one? Did you get that one yet? Nope. Jasmine, what did you get for this one? Yep, or you could do like 125. Betsy, what did you get for the next one? You didn't do it yet. David, what did you get for this one right here? You didn't do it yet. Mara, what did you get?
0.07.
Good, 0.075. Everyone understands what they're doing. They're just dividing every single number by 80. Carlos, what did you get for this last one right here? Just 0.2. Brandon, what did you get for this one? 0.15. Tanya, what did you get for the next one? Good. Or you can put just 0.175. Allison, what did you get for the next one? Good. 0.325. Kamari, what did you get for the next one?
The hockey one? 0.15.
0.15. Michael, what did you get for the next one? Good. 0.05. Jocelyn, what did you get for this one? 0.2. Brandon, what did you get for this one? Good. 0.525. And then Angel, what did you get for this one? Angel. 0.475. Why would this one be 1? Or they did
0.76.
This one?
Yeah, 0.76.
You divided, maybe you just put it in your calculator. Why would this one be 1 though, right here? Yeah, well, because it's 80 divided by 80, right, which is 1. That will always be 1. Cool. So that was the first half of the lesson. It's just, does everyone get that? You just divide by the total. You get the decimal. Now, the next part is they're going to give us the decimals, and we need to figure out what the numbers are. So now we're going to work backwards. So now they're giving us the probability that we get it, but we don't know how many people there are. What they usually do is they're going to give you one little thing in the problem, which is right here. It's 8 females like SUVs. Box that on your paper. If 8 females like SUVs, and people, this was the hardest part of this unit for most people, because it is your open-ended your test. But a lot of people in the last class, they just took this test yesterday for semester 2, and this was their biggest struggle. So 8 females like SUVs. Where would that be? Females who like SUVs. Which decimal represents that? 0.20, right? So 8 females like SUVs. That's 20% of the people, right? To figure out, I can't do anything else right now. I can't even look at the rest of the question. So I figure out what this is, my total. I need to figure out how many people are in the survey. What you do is you just divide these two. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what decimal they're referring to and divide those two numbers. What's 8 divided by 0.20 when you put it in your calculator?
No,
40. That means there's 40 total people in the survey. So that's the first thing you need to do. You need to figure out, okay, let me take what they gave me, and I need to figure out how many people are there total. I'm not even going to read the rest of the question. So how many people are there total? 40. Does that make sense how we found the total? So first thing we need to do is find the total people. Then I can continue on. How many males like SUVs? Where's males that like SUVs? Which decimal is that? 0.30, right? All we do now is we take the decimal, and instead of dividing like we did at the beginning, we multiply it by the total. Because it's 30% of the total. How many total people are there that we just figured out? 40. What do you end up getting? What do you get? 12. Cool. That means there's 12 people, 12 males who like SUVs. And that's all we do from then on out. For some reason, this was a big struggle for this unit for a lot of people. But now you're just doing the same thing over and over again. How many females are there total? Which decimal represents the total females? 0.55 right here, right? And now I'm always just multiplying it by the total amount of people. How many people are there? 40. What do you get? What do you get? 22. Does that make sense how we're doing that every single time? So every time you're taking the decimal, you're multiplying it by the total amount of people. What is the total amount of people in the survey? We just found that. What is it? Cool. How many people are females who like sports cars? Which decimal is that? 0.15, right? Or, sorry, 0.35. And then what are we always multiplying it by? 40. So always by your total, what do you end up getting? 14. How many males are there total? So how many males are here total? 45. And what are we going to do with that number? Multiply by the total. So you get the gist of what we're doing. So we take each probability and multiply by the total. The hardest part is figuring out how many total there are. How you do that is you figure out what you're given. So this is what I'm given, and I divide the two. Does that make sense? So what did this answer end up being? What did number 5 end up being? 18. And then how many males like sports cars? What decimal goes with that? 0.15 times 40. What do you end up getting? What do you get? 6. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions about this part? Okay, so what you're going to do is you're opening up your packet, your practice for today, and we're going to start with the harder part first. So where it says classwork, the last page, we're going to start with that one first. So I want to see if you can understand that practice relative frequency. So if you go to where it says this one, It's the very last page in that packet. Does anyone for any reason need that packet? Like you forgot to grab it. This packet right here, two-way frequency tables. Did anyone forget to grab it? Raise your hand if you did. Mhm. Well, does anyone else need this? No? I know, it's a lot of papers, but remember it is like, we're going really quickly. All right, so you're starting with this. So what's the first thing that I need to do right now? Find the total. How do I do that? Divide, but what am I dividing by? How do I figure out the total? What are they giving me? 16 females, 16 females that like winter. So I know there are 16 females that like winter the most. What decimal is that? 0.20. And so I know if there's 16 females that like winter the most, what do I need to do with those two numbers? To find my total people. What did we do with the first one last time? Make sure your phones are away. What are we doing with those two numbers that we did last time? Divide, right? I always divide, that's how I find the total. Then once you find the total, you take each of these decimals and you multiply by the total. So this is going to be your practice. I'm going to kind of lag behind you and we'll go over it and make sure you got that down. Your ticket out the door will be the second half of that worksheet. So I want to know that you're able to like do this part of it as well as do find the relative frequency. So start with that first half. The second half will be your ticket out the door.